This November, I decided I would try reading some wartime historical fiction. It's something I've always wanted to do, but for whatever reason, I never actually got around to doing it. So I started with All Quiet on the Western Front. I talked about this in my last video. This is one of the most powerful books I've ever read. I think everybody should read it. It made me cry. It was amazing and so well written. But since I talked about it before, I'm going to move on. The next book I read was A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. And this one's kind of interesting. So this book, we're in World War One, and we follow an American who's working in Italy with the ambulance drivers. So I don't think he is a medic or an ambulance driver himself, but he's kind of directing them. He's working with them, and essentially he's kind of on the fringes of the war, as it were. But he meets and falls in love with a British nurse, and then that's basically what the story is about. Is kind of their romance intertwined with stuff happening in the war. This one was kind of interesting because I've never read a Hemingway book before. I think I did read The Old Man and the Sea a long time ago, but that was a while back, so I didn't remember it that well. He's got such a unique writing style where it's just so um, punchy. I mean, it's very like staccato. It's like short sentences, which I thought was unique. And I did like it. I like the writing style. I didn't quite connect with the story or the book, to be honest. I think part of it is that this was written a long time ago. It's not really as character centric as the modern books that we read. So there was that. I think the general plot was it was enticing enough for me to keep going, but I wouldn't say it was a favorite or anything. But still worth reading. So then I read Beneath a Scarlet Sky by Mark Sullivan, and I think this is a pretty popular book, so you may have heard of it. This one is kind of based on a true story, from what I understand. I don't know how much of it is embellished and whatever, but essentially based on a true story. And what this story follows a guy named Pino, who's Italian. He lived in Milan during fascist Italy, so World War II. And essentially, what was happening at this time is the Catholic Church was helping Jewish refugees escape, like secretly, over the mountains into Switzerland. So it's a very noble and beautiful story. It happened in real life. Like it's really just touches your heart that they did that. And like all of the stories that go with that. And Pino essentially got, like he was a part of that. So he was one of the people who trekked the mountains and, took like basically guided Jewish refugees over the mountains into Switzerland. So that's kind of where the story starts. But then it ends up taking all of these crazy twists and turns. There's romance in it. There's some serious action as well. Like it's a crazy story. Like it's really good. I love the plot in this, and the fact that it is kind of based on a true story. Like it's pretty wild. So I really enjoyed reading this. I think the one thing about this book was that it was just nothing special stylistically. Like it was just written in such a simple way. I think the author, like he heard about the story. He interviewed Pino. He interviewed the people who experienced what happened here, and like he just wanted to splat that onto the page as straightforward as possible. It's super easy to read. It's almost young adult in the way it's written. I just thought that like because of that, it's missing like a bit of spark. Like there's nothing special literal like as an in terms of writing style or anything like that. So that I think was a bit of a detractor for me. Sometimes the dialogue felt like this is kind of childish. Like, do people really talk like this? Sometimes like there was a lack of subtext because it was just stated explicitly. So there are things like that which were a detractor for me. But at the same time, the plot and the story were like super enticing. The characters were very endearing. They're very noble generally. And there are straight up antagonists, but they're given a bit of a bit of grayness, so you kind of try to understand what exactly is happening with them. So good story. I think definitely worth a read. After that, I read The Things They Carried. So I listened to this on audio. This was Ben Books with Ben Giscon recommendation. I don't know why I got your channel wrong there. So he specifically told me I should check this one out, and I appreciated that. So I did so, and to be honest, this might have been my least favorite read. Sorry, Ben. I hate to say that. Essentially, what The Things They Carried is, I think it's autobiographical collection of kind of like short stories or events by Tim O'Brien during the Vietnam War. So it's kind of just, there's no overarching plot. This is just, this was our company of soldiers, this thing happened, and then you go to the next story, this thing happened and this thing happened, and you know, like there's definitely some thematic depth to it, and it feels very authentic and real. Like obviously he was there, you know, he's talking about things that happened, and sometimes it's pretty harrowing, and sometimes, you know, it can definitely gut punch you, but I just never felt like I was just missing that overarching plot to the point where I never connected with the book. You know, I think like I just wasn't in the mood for something that autobiographical and that, you know, like that kind of book, I guess. So I think stylistically it was the wrong time for me, and yeah, I just didn't feel like I connected to it. I just felt a bit distant. Um, Anyway, I was also reading at the same time City of Thieves by David Benioff, and I have to say this is probably one of my favorite books from November, maybe even throughout the whole year. If you don't know what this one's about, so this is the siege of Leningrad. You know, if you don't know what that was, it's one of, you know, just the most horrible things that happened in World War II, was what the city and the people of Leningrad went through when the Nazis were basically assaulting the city and cutting off all food and all that. So we're in the middle of that. It's winter. You know, there's no food anywhere in the city, and so that's kind of the world that we start in, and we follow the boy, this guy, and I think it's written as if this guy is David Benioff's granddad, or I think it's his granddad or his father. I don't remember, but anyway, so that kind of made me wonder how much of this is based on a true story. I'm not sure how much of it is, but it's anyway. So this guy, and he meets another guy, and they essentially get forced into going out on a mission to find eggs, because obviously there's a lack of food in the city, and some powerful dudes want some eggs to make a birthday cake. So that kind of like tells you the tone of the story, right? Like it's dark. There's some really gritty, horrible things happening, but the author just put in so much levity into it as well. You know, the humor, the interactions between the characters, the snappy dialogue, like it all just added up to something that was so like it was a succinct book. It hit hard. It was emotional, but at the same time, there were so many moments where I was just laughing because it was like, this is ridiculous. Like, and the interactions between these characters, like the characters were so endearing. I loved City of Thieves, and I think like for a book that's so short, it packs such a punch. It's so well written. I think y'all should read it. Honestly, like I would recommend this. Out of everything I've read this month, I think this is a really good one. After that, I was reading The Caine Mutiny by Herman Wouk. So this author, I've been wanting to check out his books for a while, and he's got these two huge epics, like Winds of War, I think is book one, and then it's a duology, and each book is like over 1,000 pages. So we're talking like Shogun length books. So I was really interested in reading those, but then at the same time, I didn't want to commit to something quite that long just yet. So I read The Caine Mutiny by him instead. And this book, so what is the Caine? The Caine is a ship, and the title kind of implies what it's about. So this was, I think, written in the 50s, and we follow a guy named Willie, and he essentially joins the Navy. And Willie's from like a rich family, so he's, you know, a bit of a snob, a bit bratty, a bit entitled, and he joins the Navy. So then, you know, you see him change through that, and then he has like a bit of a romance in this too. And I think the romance was like it was probably my favorite part of the book, to be honest. And that was like went throughout it, but at the same time, Willie's off at sea, and we see what happens on the Caine and the mutiny that occurs there. So it was really interesting because this was not a book that was like super action packed. Like it took its time getting to where it was gonna go, and then the way that mutiny happened was completely not what I expected. It was not like a driving plot, right? This is a bit meandering, and personally, I've fallen in love with those stories. I love just getting to know the characters, like spending time in their lives, like seeing all the little dramas and those things that add up. This was written in the 50s, I think I mentioned that, and so it's, you know, like a bit of an older writing style, still really good. Love the writing. Like I said, the romance was maybe one of the most enticing things, and like obviously, like it does reflect the time period it was written in, but at the same time, I appreciated that we had such a strong female character in this book, and like the way that whole thing went about was awesome. Like I really enjoyed this one, and like, you know, like it put confidence in me for reading Herman Wouk's bigger epics, which I'm really excited for. Like I don't even know if I can wait until next November, because I'm excited to read those. So yeah, that was my list of wartime books, which I think for the most part, like I read some long ones, I read a couple of shorter ones, and for the most part, it was awesome. Like I think historical fiction November is a thing, and like we should all be doing it. Maybe not, but I think I'm gonna try and do it next year as well. So once I was done that, I wanted to jump back into fantasy, and I couldn't quite decide on what to do. So I went for A Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, and this book, like the first half of this, just caught me. It was like I was thinking, oh, this is gonna be a 5-star book because I loved her writing style, and I think she's known for having a little bit more purpley and lyrical prose. I'm all for it. I'm all about that, and I love the world. I loved our super endearing character. So this book is essentially we follow a guy named Laszlo Strange, and he is a librarian assistant or something in this world, which is very unique. But he's very looked down upon. He's estranged because basically he's an orphan, and yeah, he ends up getting recruited into a mission to find a long lost city. And one of the quirks about Laszlo is that he's always been obsessed with this city. Like, you know, he's like read all the books about it. He's literally written books about it, but it's kind of a convoluted way. Through a convoluted way, he ends up getting into a mission to go to that city and basically fix a problem that the denizens of that city are having. So, anyway, I enjoyed this book right up till maybe the last third. I think I liked it all throughout, but then towards the end, I felt like the writing lost some of that magic that it had from the beginning. I think it just became a bit more straightforward, which is okay. But it also just felt like the focus of the story shifted a bit too much towards romance, which is okay. But you know, like you never wanted to truly detract, and it kind of felt like I was promised something different to what I ended up receiving towards the end. And it was a well-written romance for sure. And then the thing is that romance continues into book 2, which I am now probably about 70 to 80% through, the Muse of Nightmares book 2. And in that book, it just seems to be even more of a central focus. So I've ended up enjoying that less than Strange the Dreamer. It is what it is, you know, like it's a matter of taste, right? So for me, it's still a good read, still worth reading, but maybe not the favorite that I was hoping it was going to be. In addition to that, I've been reading Lord of Emperors. So this is book 2 in the Serentine Mosaic by GGK. I think everyone in BookTube has heard of this book. Everyone knows how everyone else who has read it loves it. And I have to say, guys, it is so good. Like, I loved book 1. I thought it was awesome. I've been buddy reading this with Ben and Nico, which is a great experience. And I can't wait to chat to them about it. We did have a chat about book 1 before, so you can go check that out if you've read it. But yeah, like book 2, like I've read about a bit over 50%, maybe like 55% or something, and so far it's been awesome. Like right from page 1, I was so into it. I was like, yes, this is it. This is it'll be a contender for one of my top books of the year. And yeah, so I mean that's been my November. That's what I'm reading right now. You guys like give me some advice on what I should read next. You know, there's a bunch of things I've been thinking about. I want to get into The Expanse. I want to read Shadows of the App by Adrian Tchaikovsky. There's the Lord of a Shattered Land. Like there are so many good books on my list, but I just cannot for the life of me decide on where to go. So give me some advice. I'll follow you guys. I'll do what you say. And yeah, like one of the things is I know that when the truth is coming out, and you know obviously there's a lot of hype for that. Personally, I'm feeling almost negative hype. I'm dreading the release because I know that I want to read it, but I kind of don't want to read it. You know, like, I don't know. I have very convoluted mixed feelings about Wind and Truth. So I want to be a part of the hype, but I really don't want to read Wind and Truth, to be honest. Maybe I'll just put it on audio and play it at 2x speed. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, let me know. What do you guys think? What should I read next? And, you know, it's almost Christmas time, so I hope you guys are setting up for a nice, relaxing few weeks until we can just chill out and enjoy the holidays. Have a good one. I can't believe I completely forgot that I also read All the Light We Cannot See. What's this book about? So this is a pretty popular book from what I understand, and we follow a French girl during World War II, and she's completely blind. And we also follow a German boy who's a bit of a genius. He's really good at fixing radios. I think they're about the same age, and we follow them, and for most of the story they're in different parts of the world. and there's some crazy harrowing things that they both go through, and ultimately they end up in the same coastal city in France, which is under German occupation but is now facing American bombing, right? So it's a very non-linear story. There's like we start off in 1944, we go back to like 1935 or something, and then we come back to like 1941, and there's all of these time jumps. But at the same time, it's a very moving story. It's a very touching story. When I read the premise of this, I was pretty certain it's going to be a romance, but it's not really a romance. It's very much these are two separate lives, and then there's some critical points where they come together and important, powerful things happen, and then like events go on. So it's not a romance at all, I think, but it is a really beautiful story, and there's some like very amazing moments in it. I think for this one, it was just the non-linear narrative style is the one thing which just kind of disconnected me. Like there were genuine points where I was like, what time period are we in? What timeline are we in? So there was that. I think that made it a little bit trickier to get invested in. I'd say like after the first half of the book, I got kind of used to it. I finally understood what exactly was happening in each of the different timelines, and from there on, I enjoyed it a lot. It's not a fun story. Let me tell you that. It's sad and tragic. There isn't much in the way of humor, but it's touching and it's moving. And in that, I think it's worthy of the recognition that it gets. It's very well written as well. I think like this book has gorgeous prose, like really pretty prose. So I think it's worth reading for that alone. And yeah, I'm sorry to add that on last minute. I have no idea how I forgot it. It was a pretty important read in November. Yeah, have a good one, guys.